Welcome to another episode of the Call Your Mother podcast. I'm Mary Ellen.
And I'm Megan, a mother-daughter duo here to talk life, love, and lessons with a whole lot of laughs.
Every week, we'll dive into real conversations from two generations, two perspectives, and one big heart.
We'll share stories, swap advice, and maybe even get a little teary.
Okay, probably me. But don't worry, we always find our way back to laughter. Let's face it, life's messy, but you don't have to go it alone.
Let's get into it. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Call Your Mother podcast. Mom, how you doing today?
I'm great. I'm just happy that people watch the first podcast, and hopefully they're back for another episode. Today we have a good episode today.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I heard earlier that you were feeling a little steamy, and I'm like over here wishing I was steamy. And so for those who don't know, I'm in southeastern Massachusetts, and where are you?
I am in southwestern Florida, and we are approaching what we call our melt season.
Yeah. And so, does your springtime happen, in February? When is your spring?
It is. I was planting basil and cilantro in my planter box, back in early February. They say you have to, I know, isn't that crazy? You have to plant your planter boxes, I think it's February through April. Yeah, and then once the warm weather comes, it's the rain season. For folks that are in Florida, they probably remember last year.
Mm-hmm.
Last June was the rainiest month in a very, very long time, so I was told.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, enough weather talk. I know we could go on and on and on about that, but this is just all to say that, we have some distance between us right now.
We do.
And that's, what we're going to talk about today is just how we navigate distance in our relationship and how it's impacted our dynamic. And yeah, so I think that could also be relevant for people who might also be living far away from their parents or away at school, and then they come home and they're reminded, oh my gosh, I really like being away from my parents, and so I'm going to go back. And
yeah. And now I have to do it now I have to teeter-totter. I have to yes, I love my freedom, but then they have to come back and then deal with, having not left. Yes, all of that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I guess to start, Mom, I'm curious, when did you feel like you experienced real distance? When was the first time you felt like our relationship, we were dealing with distance?
So I didn't expect, okay. I think normally any mother would say college, but I'm going to go before that. It's just an example. You don't know kind of what's in store. I think what surprised me was just, your father and I ended up getting divorced and then having to deal with visitation distance between us for, what we had every other weekend. And I think, as you go through that process, and for folks that have gone through that process with children, you recognize that that's what it is. And then when it happens, it's very odd because when you're little, parents are always just assume, your kids are around. So having to deal with that distance, even though it was a weekend, was different. It was the first time, I think the first experience that I was kind of okay, there was a purposeful gap in the time that you were at the house until you came back. And I don't think I was prepared for it until it happened. I think in words I was, but when it happened, and it wasn't a sad thing or anything like that. It was just you and your brother weren't there. And so
probably a lot quieter.
Well, it was a lot quieter, but it was one of those, like you had said, we had talked about in the other podcast about what do you do in your spare time? I mean, that was the whole thing. It was 2 days, but it was like, oh my God, my spare time as a mother when you guys were young was being a mother. And so
Hmm.
the distance forced having to have spare time, and I had nothing to do. Honestly, like, and I don't say that in a bad way. I mean, I went to Marshalls and TJ Maxx and that was fun, right? And it was quiet or whatever. But like it was a pause and it was a distance that I had a hard time kind of saying, okay, what do I want to do in my spare time? I was used to
Hmm.
just being a mom. So that was, I
Hmm.
think, the start of really kind of, I did crafts and I did journaling and stuff like that. I read books that I probably never had the time to do, but
Do
that
you
was the first
remember?
thing.
Do you remember you started your little stationery business? You
I
had that?
did. I did.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Yes,
Yeah.
I loved doing station. I loved doing invitations.
Hmm.
Oh my God, there was the most wonderful stationery store. It's not like, I don't think this is the norm
Yeah, it was
anymore.
in West Hartford. I remember going there with you a lot and getting all the like glittery paper, and I was like, this is so fun.
It was so fun. And then all the fonts and yeah,
Yeah.
I did people that I worked with, I did a graduation party invitations. I did a picnic, like a July 4th picnic invitation. Now everything's so digital, but oh gosh, that was so much fun. Yeah, you're right.
Oh,
Forgot about that.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think like for me, definitely like the every other weekend being away was definitely part of that. But also there was a point growing up where you were traveling for work like every
Hmm.
other week and gone for a few days at a time.
Hmm.
And that for me, I think was like the first real memorable thing of like us having distance. And, I kind of I just went with it. Like, I didn't really think
Hmm.
anything other than that because I knew it was like important for your job and like you needed to do that to like support me and AJ. So
Hmm.
I like didn't think twice. I wasn't like upset about it. I just was kind of like accepting of it because I knew that's what needed to happen.
Hmm.
But when you were traveling for work, AJ and I would stay with Grandma Ronnie, and that was always a treat. It's funny,
Hmm.
AJ and I were talking about that a while ago of like the core things we remembered when we stayed with Grandma Ronnie, and it was always she like for breakfast she had like the little cereal boxes that you can get in like the multi-packs, and we would like have those.
You know where she
And
got that from?
where?
Grandma Helen. Grandma when
Yeah?
we yeah, so when we grew up in Massachusetts, and so when we came for the holidays and we stayed with Grandma Helen, same thing. She would
She
have
had
the
little boxes of
little
cereal.
boxes, yeah, Fruit Loops, Frosted Flakes. It was the best because Grandma Ronnie did not let us eat sugared cereal. So when we went to Grandma Helen's, so consider yourself lucky, because I don't think we did sugar cereals either at home. But yeah, that's where she got it. It's the best. The little boxes.
That's cool. Well, I love that things could be passed down but yeah, but I think like so just going back to the thing that we were talking about.
Hmm.
I did experience some bouts of like insomnia though, like when I was
Oh.
there, and I wonder like I don't know, like I still don't really understand what that was all about, but um yeah, I think just
Like
having
you
to
woke
go
up in
back
the
and
middle of
forth.
the night, or
Like I couldn't sleep. Like I just couldn't sleep. And I don't know if that's just because I wasn't like in my bed or like I was in a different environment, but you know, like growing up, whether it was like being back and forth from home and dad's house or home and grandma's house, it was like I felt like I was kind of living out of a backpack, which sometimes
hmm
could be like very unstable. But actually, I think it helped me because now, like, I love backpacking and I like hiking. And I was like, wait a minute, so you're telling me I can just shove everything in a bag and live out of the bag?
Well, that started way earlier than the distance, Megan. I don't
What do you
know.
mean?
Well, you, my friend, were infamous for building a cave, like in your crib, or like if you loved like your stuff, like being around. So yeah, now
No,
that, so
but I'm talking about like being able to just throw a bag together and
I know, but that's what I'm saying. I think it's funny because you built a cave everywhere and you had your stuff, and now you learned how to take all your stuff that was in your cave and stick it in a bag and go places. And so it was just evolving that whole concept.
that's
The
true.
distance kind of
And
helped it.
I am notoriously the bag lady now. And when We were
Mm-hmm.
doing a lot of back and forth between Massachusetts and Maine because that's where James, my husband, is from. And when
Mm-hmm.
we were doing that, it was like no problem for me. Like didn't even have to think about it. Just pack a bag and go.
It is true though.
So
I mean, if you think about it, like if you take that perspective, it makes that's what you took from it. And it's very easy for you. For some,
it's a skill.
I
It's a skill.
it's definitely a skill. It's definitely a skill. But you know what? You also, I mean, you and your brother were both in daycare, gosh, early on, because both of your parents
Hmm.
worked full time,
Hmm.
and in a time where, so I think, if I even before that, what you're talking about with me traveling or with every other weekend, with your father, even before that, I think, for me, there was a distance with just you guys being me working and you guys being in
Hmm.
daycare, which is a whole other episode topic about mommy
Hmm.
guilt, working mom guilt. We could do that topic for sure. Yeah, I think that's always been a constant. So that was the first time, I think, for
Yeah.
me, for you.
Way, way back, way, way back. But yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like I handled it well.
You
I feel like
did.
I handled it. Yeah.
You did. I think, it's funny. You're an old soul.
Mm.
Um, you're also a firstborn. That's another topic for an episode.
Mm.
Birth
Mhm.
order. It is real. Birth order is
Mhm.
real, 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 real. Maybe that's one that we have AJ come in as a
Yeah.
honorary co-host and help us kind of explain that topic. I'm sure we could come up with plenty of stories. But yeah, but I think you're an old soul. Definitely. It's almost like you came here and you are going through this life's, where I am in this life. So when you're younger and you're experiencing all those things, those distance things or whatnot, but then something clicks inside you because you're
Mhm.
such an old soul that you take it with grace and you
Mm.
kind of go with it and you much, much wiser and more mature for your age, for sure, in different situations. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, and then like we didn't even talk about college, but we can like dive into that real quick. I mean, so like for
Oh
me
my.
personally, so like for everyone listening, just context, we were living what in Connecticut, central Connecticut,
Hmm.
and looking at schools, and I only applied to three schools. Like I didn't apply to all these crazy schools. One was Eastern Connecticut, which is like what, like an hour away. And
Yeah.
then Vermont, which was like probably the farthest.
Hmm. That was in the middle of
Castleton.
nowhere, though. Like
I was
that
in the
was
middle of
like
nowhere.
nowhere.
And then LaSalle, which is right outside Boston.
Hmm.
And, we'd been going to Boston here and there, like over the years, because you grew up outside of Boston, and I really enjoyed the
I went to
city,
school in
and
Boston.
that too. And you went to school in Cambridge, and I don't know, like when we went to the tour, I was like, this feels right. Like I can see myself here for 4 years. So, and I kind of knew, like growing up and like being in like suburbia, pretty much. That's really what it was.
I know.
Everyone was so focused on like their friend group, their clique, their sport, and like that's great, but I like have always had this feeling deep down of like, no, 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 I think there's something bigger for me. And so I always felt like I need to branch out and I need to go and put myself in like a different environment. And I'm so happy I did because I met my husband the first day.
You did. You did. That's right.
I did? Yeah. And then another opportunity during school, had the opportunity to study abroad, and of course, everyone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to Europe because I went to like a school
Oh
known
my
for
God.
fashion."
No, 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 no. Okay, I'm going to tell a story about studying abroad because that, and it's okay. You dove head first into I'm gonna initiate distance. So Megan decided that she was going to study abroad. I think that's great. Megan decided to be one of only 12 kids in the whole country to go to the University of
At the time.
Stellenbosch
At the time, yes.
at the time, but still, like 12 kids in the whole country that were going to University of Stellenbosch in South Africa. And Megan treated it like, yeah, it's no problem. I'm just going to go to Detroit. And I'm like, you're going to Stellenbosch. Like that's huge. And so I remember her, we go to LaGuardia and we basically drop her off. And I'm like crying. And she's got this humongous suitcase. And you went to, where did you fly through? I forget.
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. So you had a layover in Amsterdam. From Amsterdam to Stellenbosch, literally a 14-hour flight. Now, from somebody who has traveled for work for many years all over the place across this country, I just looking at it, Megan, online, like to see how,
Hmm.
like the map of you
Because of
like
course you were
flying
tracking the flight.
all, yeah,
You
I
were
was
tracking
tracking
the
the flight
flight.
all the way down to the bottom of Africa. It was like, oh my God. Like, and the that for me was also like another distance experience where
Hmm.
I literally, and then you landed and the seasons were all flip-flopped, right? Because
Hmm.
you're by the equator. And I remember you being like, I have to go buy a space heater. And I was like, oh my God, she's freezing. Think about your kids, like, you're shopping for their dorm stuff and you're able to
Hmm.
kind of like Amazon something to them if they need it, or like that's pretty normal, right? But when your
No, in
child
South
calls
Africa.
you, right, when your child calls you and she's like, I have to go to the store and try to find a space heater. And I was like, well, how cold was that? And she tells me, oh my God, my heart broke. I couldn't do anything. I was like,
Yeah, but
oh,
that's the point too, though. Like it's good. Like
agree.
I think it was good because otherwise, how would I learn? So part of that whole experience was like, okay, I'm like on my own. I'm gonna like figure this out. And I did. I learned a lot.
You did. The most gorgeous pictures I've ever seen. And the wine that you brought back from South Africa was just divine.
I did some traveling in my days pre-COVID, and now we travel down to Florida twice a year.
Hmm.
And what I so appreciate about you is like you actually try to like plan a couple times a year, whether we're coming down or you're coming up.
Hmm.
Like I think you're very intentional about like when are we going to visit, because before it was like, yeah, I'll drive like an hour or two and like just walk through the door and you're there, you know? And it's
Right.
not like that anymore.
Hmm.
And so we do have to be more intentional about our visits. And like also like I think too like especially the last time we came down to Florida,
Hmm.
we didn't plan as much as we had in the
No.
past. Like we genuinely just hung out and I really appreciated that too
Hmm.
because like that's what we used to do. We were home. Like we were in Connecticut and it was just like that's what you did because we saw each other frequent enough that it didn't have to be like this big ordeal. And I felt
Hmm.
like when we first started visiting in Florida, I mean, granted too, like it's a new place for you and Steve, like you both were exploring the area and wanted to share what you were exploring and like it was super fun and I still have
Hmm.
fun. But I think like now everyone's more settled and we can just actually be together and like not have to do all these things. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's been what? It's been 3 years. So, and there's a lot that
hmm.
happened in those 3 years to kind of get to that point. I think the funniest part was is you the we decided that we were going to go to the beach and you guys were just like, okay. So like we go to the beach or whatever.
Hmm.
We've done that so many times, like at different ages,
Hmm.
different places growing up or whatever. And when we went this past trip, when we went to the beach, and then
Hmm.
you guys saying, "Oh, can we go back to the beach tomorrow?" It made me laugh so hard. It made me laugh because it was like you guys enjoyed the area just as much as we did. And it also
Hmm.
reminded me of times that, when we used to go and rent the house in Green Harbor and
Hmm.
have the whole week and be able to go to the beach or whatever. So I agree with you. I think the last visit was much more relaxed. I think it was
Hmm.
much more enjoyed. It wasn't as rushed. And I think,
Right, yeah.
yeah, I think everybody enjoyed themselves more than the past few times because it was so new and there was a lot to see.
Right.
We
Right.
wanted
And
to
this, I think
share.
that's normal.
Yeah, we wanted to
Yeah,
share
I
and
think
stuff.
that's so normal. And I admire you guys for that, just like opening up your home and wanting to have fun.
Yeah. Well, that was the whole thing. It was so in the same way that you chose to kind of create the distance and going to study abroad,
Mhm.
Steve and I were met with the ability, a fantastic opportunity to do something that we didn't
Right?
think earlier than we thought we were going to be able to do. And that was a big thing. And when we talked to you and AJ about it, it was very important because it would change that whole
Mhm.
dynamic of
Right.
visiting and everything. And and I appreciate you guys because you guys were absolutely like not only accepting of it, but you were super excited for us. And that's huge too. because you guys are still, kind of making your way to be independent, setting up your own lives. And so
Hmm.
I actually appreciated that because it allowed us
Yeah.
to change the dynamic in terms of how we communicate, we visit each other, and deal with distance.
Yeah, like it's all reciprocal in my eyes of
Hmm.
like over the years you've been so accepting and supporting of me going away, and now it was kind of like that was my opportunity to return the favor to you and Steve because I knew genuinely like, and I'm still so happy for you guys because I know like you love it down there, and I know
Hmm.
that, and you're much happier, and like I see that. And so I was like, why am I gonna be like, no, stay here? Like, no. Like you gotta live your life just as much as you've allowed me to live mine. So I think that's where I was coming from with
Hmm.
like everything. And yeah, and I think over the years as we've kind of gone over, like we've gotten better, and it's become easier to accept the distance. But
Hmm.
what do they say? What do they say?
What
Distance distance makes the
makes
heart grow fonder. It does. It really does. And
I
I
know
think
it does. I'm not being facetious. I know it
no.
does. I also
Yeah.
think too that people, we're laughing and we're telling stories about the distance, and some of it is rooted in, really big life events, and other of it is, kind of the progression of how children grow up and the relationship between, parents and kids kind of change with distance. There was also, because that relationship is so close, there was a lot of bad conversations, right? Like, so there was a lot of bad conversations in terms of like being in the relationship and trying to work through the distance. And
Hmm.
sometimes, it's like anything else, good days, bad days, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's not like every time we pick up the phone, it's gumdrops and rainbows. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes, we talk about things and I hang up and I get a little melancholy or I get a little sad
Hmm.
because, you know, I wish I could be like, oh, I'm going to jump in the car on Saturday and go to
Hmm.
lunch impromptu, like, and I can't. Um,
Hmm.
so, there's good and bad to it.
Hmm.
But it's kind of a ebb and flow of
Right.
having to deal with that distance. And you would
Yeah.
think that we would FaceTime more. AJ likes to FaceTime, but you and I
Hmm.
just talk on the phone, and yeah, yeah,
Whatever works. Whatever
whatever
works.
works.
So I guess, yeah, like, why don't we end it with this? Like, do you have any advice for other people who are dealing with the distance? Like, what is your advice after all of this experience that we've had?
Oh my God, pick your battles and find the humor.
I guess I would say too, like, this goes back to one of the lessons that you've taught me over the years is like you, as in me, but you as well, listeners,
Hmm.
you control the relationships you have. Like,
Hmm.
you are in control. That is something you've taught me from an early point in life of like, you can choose what kind of relationship you want with someone. And so if you want the distance and it's healthy for you, that's okay. Like, that's your choice. But if, the distance is hard and you want to be more involved with whoever is you have distance with and like be part of their lives more, like make an effort, like have a
Hmm.
day where you both agree to like call each other and catch up or a time frame or a window that that works for the both of you. Be more intentional about like at the beginning of each year, like kind of mapping out, like, oh, hey, when are we going to visit each other and kind of mapping out those time frames, like, even if it's ballpark, but just, again, like choosing the type of relationship you want to have.
Hmm.
I think that would be
Hmm.
my advice.
Yeah. And I'd also love to hear from folks that are listening into any other advice that they might have. We're in the
Yeah.
season where everybody's coming home from a year at college and they're coming back. It's gonna be the summer. You remember those
Mm-hmm.
years, Meg, coming back and having to deal with loving the distance, but then also, being up close and personal all summer, and some kids are busy working.
In
My
your
God.
office on the daybed,
Yep.
working three jobs and waking up in the morning to you click clacking on your keyboard. Oh yeah. Yeah.
There was no distance between us
No distance.
in that
We
time.
went from
There was no distance.
some distance to no distance to a lot of distance.
Mm-hmm.
That was the point in our lives.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
but I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all the time we've had together.
Yeah, I am too. I think this was a good topic. I mean, distance is a serious thing. It
Hmm.
means something different to everybody. And I like how
Hmm.
you reminded folks about you can choose your relationships, how you want to have your relationships. I always told you and AJ both growing up, I always used to say, if it's not easy, then it's not for you.
Not gonna work. Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
That's another
And
topic
sometimes,
for a show, but
yeah. Yeah. And I think going back to what you said about the ebbs and flows of life, like that also applies to distance.
hmm
For example, like even with AJ right now, he just bought a house. He's like doing the woodworking stuff. He's really
hmm
busy. Like, and so he's got a new job. And so, like, before, we talk a lot more, but now we don't really as much because I recognize that the distance is healthy. It's giving him space to do what he needs to do, and I'm also
Right.
busy.
hmm
So I'm not mad about it either. Like it's healthy distance, and I know for this ebb and flow of our lives right now in our relationship, it works because when we talk to each other, it's like you would have never like we pick it up right back up where
Well,
it,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a really good example of, distance is, it's okay.
Great, it's healthy.
It is. It is healthy. Yeah. But being together is great too. So,
It is. It totally is. I know. I was going through my photo album a few days ago and I found, do you remember when we were in Marshfield one summer and you got a cake for every, so again,
what did we do?
for context for everyone, it was like we had not, like we hadn't seen each other in a while and we were also catching up with a lot of family and friends that we haven't seen in a while. And you decided to get a cake and it was the icing on the top of the cake was happy everything to everyone. And we just did a day where we just celebrated everything for everyone because so much time had gone on and a lot had happened for a lot of people. And I
Wasn't
was
it
like,
COVID? It was after COVID. I
I
think it was
don't,
when we rented the house after
it
COVID.
might have been. It might have been.
That was the pause. It was like all of a sudden we were just like, oh my God, like, everything
Right.
people weren't doing what they normally do. So we got a cake and we are like happy everything to everyone because we weren't
Yeah.
able to share, we weren't able to get together and share
I
like
know.
everything. I know.
So we
I know.
had forced distance. I mean, social distance.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was fun. I came across that the other day.
Well, this was a good topic. I think if you deal with distance in your relationships, sometimes it's necessary and sometimes it might feel like hurtful or it might feel like it's one-sided, but it all ebbs and flows. It's not about the distance sometimes. Distance brings funny stories, but it's more about the relationship being able to sustain or be defined by the different types of distances that are experienced over the course of, a certain time frame. We don't control it. We just kind of go with it, and it's always
Hmm.
good. I'm glad that we visited some of our experiences with distance because I forgot a lot of these, but it really
Hmm.
does. The sum of all parts, it does. It definitely defines resiliency and or to your point, you can pack a bag and go anywhere, and that is a skill.
It's a skill. It's a
It's a
skill.
skill. It's a skill.
Cool. Well, why don't you say call it with this?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Leave us a message in the comments of any other funny stories about distance you might have, or your thoughts in terms of how distance does shape relationships to be stronger, better. We'd love to hear from you. Until the next time, have a good one. We'll talk to you guys
And
soon.
don't forget to call your mother.
That's right. Call your mother.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.